Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Grade 11 Mathematical Literacy webinar this morning. Please be patient as we provide a few more minutes so that all the learners can attend the webinar. Use this time to familiarize yourself with the panel on the right side or at the bottom of your screen. We will begin shortly. Once again, good morning to the Grade 11 Mathematical Literacy webinar. It looks like the majority of the learners has already attended and is ready to start. Before we continue, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Brits. I am the Educational Specialist for Mathematical Literacy. Before we begin this webinar, let's cover some of the basics. If you are struggling to hear me, make sure your audio is on and your speaker volume is turned up. You will automatically be muted when joining the session. Should you have any questions, you can ask your question in the question box below or on the right of your screen, or you can use the raise your hand icon. To raise your hand, click the icon on your dashboard below or on the right of your screen. Download this presentation and additional resources in the handout box below or on your right. You will also find all this information in the question box below or on your right. Remember to send us your questions. On this point, I would just like to inform all of you that I will not be answering any questions during this webinar, as well as at the end of this webinar. However, I ask you to please still submit your questions in the question box so that I can give you feedback and get back to your questions via email. I would also like to ask that you stick to the topic of today's discussion and that you do not refrain from this topic, as we will take you off from this webinar if you do not stick to the topic. I would also like to introduce Marika Bakker. She is our organizer for this webinar. You will not be able to hear or see her, but she is here just checking that everything goes smoothly during this webinar. For the handouts, please be aware that during this discussion, you can download the notes on week 1, so the notes that was made available last week, and you can also download the slides that we will be discussing today. The slides as well as the notes on week 1 are made available in the resource tab on guided learning, so please download it during this session, and if you do not download it during this session, they will be made available on guided learning. Now, before we go on with today's discussion, let us just quickly have a look on the topics that you will be covering during term 2. So the first topic is finance, which includes interest, banking, and inflation. Your second topic for this term will be measurement, which includes distance, length, mass, volume, and temperature. Then the last topic for term 2 is maps, plans, and other representations, which include scale and map work. If you wish to have a more detailed explanation, including the prescribed time amount that you should spend on each topic, please make sure to download the notes on week 1. The notes do include a better description and a more detailed explanation of all the topics and tasks for term 2. Now, for today's discussion, we are going to be looking at a loan agreement. Now, a loan agreement is an arrangement between two parties, a lender and a borrower. When the lender borrows money to the borrower with the expectation that the money will be repaid with interest in a predetermined period. Now, from that section, I would just like to take out and discuss two key concepts. The first term is interest. Now, when we look at a loan agreement, the interest that is added to this loan agreement can be either calculated using simple interest or compound interest. Now, if you are still uncertain about the topic on interest, the notes on during week 1 was on the topic of interest, so please download the notes and familiarize yourself with the content during provided during week 1. The second term that I would like to discuss is the term that refers to the period. Now, when we talk about a period, it normally refers to the years or the months during which the loan agreement will be repaid. Then right at the bottom of the slide, you will see that we talk about a monthly installment. Now, the loan is repaid in small amounts each month. This small amount is referred to as an installment. We are continuing with a loan agreement discussion. Now, people take out loans to cover expenses such as student loans, car loans, home appliance, and furniture purchases. When a borrower takes out a loan, they can borrow the entire amount or a part of the amount needed. Now, before we continue on with the rest of the slide, I would just like to stop on this point for a moment and discuss a hire purchase agreement. Now, in the event where you purchase a product, appliance or piece of furniture, and you do not possess the full amount in order to pay for the appliance or piece of furniture, then you are required to pay a deposit. Now, a person is able to pay a deposit, which is expressed as a percentage of the value of the product. Now, when you pay a deposit, you will only be required to borrow the outstanding amount for the appliance or furniture. When you pay a deposit and you only borrow the outstanding amounts, this is called a hire purchase agreement. Now, it is extremely important that you remember that when you work with a hire purchase agreement, the interest that is added to the borrowed amount is only calculated using simple interest and not compound interest. Now, if we continue, you will see that after a deposit has been paid, the outstanding amount is paid in monthly installments, and those installments already include interest. Now, when you take out a loan from a bank or a micro lender, you might come across a situation where the interest is calculated in compound interest. But as I explained, when it comes to a hire purchase agreement, the interest is only calculated using simple interest. Now, I would like to discuss a few examples during today's webinar. You will find that the type of examples that I will be discussing with you is similar to the examples or the questions that you will come across during a task, a test, or an exam paper. So please pay attention to how the questions are asked and how the question statements are given to you, as it is important for you to understand that. Now, the first example reads, Denise wants to buy a laptop on hire purchase for 7,400 Rand. The deposit is 15% of the cash price and the repayment period is 3 years. Now, the two things that you need to take from that question statement is the 15% deposit. Now, the 15% is expressed, or the deposit is expressed as a percentage of the purchase or the cash price. And then the second part that you need to see here is the period, which is given in years, and it is 3 years. The first question reads, calculate the deposit that Denise will need to pay. Now we are starting off with an easy question. In order for you to determine the deposit, you are going to express the deposit percentage as a fraction, and you are going to multiply that with the cash price. So what I've explained here, you can see it over here. The deposit expressed as a fraction, and you multiply that by the cash price of 7,400 Rand. If you put this into your calculator, the answer that you will get is 1,110 Rand. Therefore, the deposit indicates the amount that Denise will pay for the laptop before she takes it home. So this part does not fall, or this amount does not form part of the amount that she will actually be borrowing. The next question reads, calculate the outstanding amount after the deposit has been paid. So in other words, calculate the amount that you will be borrowing after the deposit has been paid. We will do that by taking the cash price of 7,400 Rand, and from that we subtract the deposit, which is 1,110 Rand. That leaves us with an outstanding amount of 6,290 Rand. Hence, this is the amount that she will be borrowing. We are going to continue with our first example. The question statement remains the same. Now, the next question reads, calculate the interest on the owed amount at 12% per annum. Now, per annum refers to per year. Now, if we continue with this, you will see I did mention that Denise is purchasing this laptop on a hire purchase agreement, and therefore the interest that we will be calculating is going to be simple interest and not compound interest. So once again, if you are still unsure working with interest and how to determine and calculate the interest on a amount borrowed, please go and have a look at the notes that was given to you during week 1. It is available in the handout section, and it is also available on guided learning underneath the resource tab. So please make sure that you go and get those notes if you are still uncertain about interest. Now, if we look at our calculation here, we are going to determine the interest added to the borrowed amount by saying the outstanding amount, or the amount that she is going to borrow, multiplied by the interest rates expressed as a fraction, and we multiplied that with the period of 3 years. If you type this into your calculator, you will get an answer of 2,264 Rand and 40 cents. Now, On this point, I would just like to quickly discuss something else which is extremely important when giving final answers. So you will see here that if you put this into your calculator, the answer will read 2,264,4. Now, you will also always see that in a task, in a test, or in an exam paper, the instructions in the front of your paper will always ask you to round your answer off correctly to 2 decimal places. Now, in the event where there is only 1 decimal value, you are still required to round off to 2 decimal values. Therefore, we are not only working with finances here, which requires 2 decimals after the comma. You are going to put a 0 after the 4. Now, this 0 will allow you to then round your answer off to 2 decimal values, and it will also act as a placeholder. So it is not going to change anything with regard to the value of your answer. Now, extremely important that you pay attention to this, as this is one of the main ways in which you lose marks for your final answer, especially in tests and exams. Have a look at how many marks you lose due to incorrect rounding. Now, I would like to continue with our example. The question statement remains the same. The question reads, what will the niece's monthly installment be over the 3-year period? Now, what I would like you to take from that question is the term monthly installment. Now, we have already calculated the borrowed amount that Denise will borrow. We have calculated the interest that is payable on the outstanding amount. So together, if we add those two values together, the outstanding amount that she borrowed as well as the interest amount, it gives us a total of 8,554 Rand and 40 cents. Now, that is the total amount that she will be paying in 3 years. So in order for us to determine the monthly installment, we first have to determine the period in months. So she will be doing the repayment over a period of 3 years, which we are multiplying with the number of months in a year. So in total, she will be repaying this amount of 8,554 Rand 40 cents over 36 months. Now, our next step, in order to determine what our monthly installment will be, we are going to take the total repayment amount and we are going to be dividing that with the period in months, especially because we want to work out what her monthly installment will be. If we divide those two values with each other, we get an answer of 237 Rand 62 cents. Thus, this is the amount that she will be repaying for the next 36 months in order to pay off her debt, which includes interest. So at this point, before we continue, I would just like to ask all of you, if you are still with me, if you still understand what we have been doing up until this point. So if you are still with me and you still understand, please put on your hand icon so that I can see that I still have all of your attention. Fantastic. I see a lot of hands. It's good to see that you are all still following. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we will be continuing. Oh, I forgot a note. Once again, back to the rounding off. As I explained in the previous slide, pay attention to your final answer and that you are always going to round off to the nearest 2 decimal places. Please, if you are still unsure of how to round off to 2 decimal places, please drop me a question in the question box so that I can assist you in the matter. Now we will be continuing with example 2, which is an advertisement on a microwave which is being sold. You will see in the advertisement, they give you the cash price of 2,399 Rand. They give you the amount, the deposit. So if you are going to purchase this microwave with a hire purchase agreement, then the information here at the bottom will become very important. You will see the deposit is 650 Rand. The term is 24 months. The monthly installment is 170 Rand and the insurance is 12 Rand per month. The first question reads, how much interest is the salesperson charging over the period agreed on in the terms? Now, at this point, I would like you to notice that in the advertisement, they don't give you an interest rate. So you will not be able to use your simple interest formula to calculate the interest charged, as there is no interest rate given. What they do give is the monthly installment. Now you need to understand that your monthly installment already includes a percentage of the interest rate. So we are going to be able to determine the interest by doing the following calculations. First, we are going to say the total monthly installment is 170 Rand. We are going to multiply that by the period, which is 24 months. And that tells us that over the 24 months, she will be repaying 4,080 Rand. Now, please note that this amount is excluding the insurance, as she will not be paying interest on the insurance amount of 12 Rand a month. So your monthly installment, including your interest, is only going to be on this 170 Rand. Now, our next step to determine the interest over this period will be to take the amount that she paid in reality, which is this amount, 4,080 Rand, which we just determined. And from that amount, we will subtract the actual cash price, which is 2,399 Rand. If we subtract these two values, it gives us a final answer of 1,681 Rand. Now, this indicates to us that the amount that she paid more than the cash price, which is this, is the interest that was added on the cash price over the period of 24 months. Now, please remember that interest is only charged on the outstanding amount and not on the deposit. We are going to continue with example 2. Please pay attention that the advertisement remains unchanged and we are still working with the same information. Now, the question that we will continue with reads, the microwave was purchased with a hire purchase agreement. So therefore, not compound interest, but simple interest, according to the terms advertised. What will the total amount be that was paid at the end of the 24 months? Now, the formula that I gave you here is not a formula that is going to be in your textbook. It is not a formula that will be given to you in a test or an exam paper. This formula is derived from the information given to us in our question statement. So we will determine the total amount paid at the end of the 24 months by taking the deposit, adding the monthly installments or the total monthly installments, and to that also adding the insurance. At this stage, the insurance comes to play. We are going to substitute in the information that we have to our availability. First, 650 Rand for our deposit, then our monthly installments over the total period is 170 Rand times 24 months. And to that, we add the insurance. Now, remember, we are working with the total amount paid over 24 months. Therefore, we are going to multiply the 12 Rand with 24 months. You get the final answers for both of those brackets. And when we add the three values together, it gives you a final answer of 5,000 Rand or 5,018 Rand. Now, I would like you to note at this stage, it becomes extremely important in mathematical literacy. You are required to make assumptions, to analyze information, and give opinions on information given. So at this stage, I would like you to note that if she purchased the microwave cash, she would have only paid 2,399 Rand. But now, because she borrowed an amount, she has to pay interest and she has to pay insurance per month, which adds up to her paying 5,018 Rand, which is quite a substantial amount more than the cash price. So at the end of the day, it would have saved her a lot of money if she just saved up and paid for the microwave in cash instead of going ahead and borrowing money to pay for the microwave. We are still continuing with example 2, and the information in our advertisement is still unchanged. The next question reads, over the 2-year period, what percentage of the total amount paid for the microwave is interest? Now, over here, I would like you to note that the answer that we will need to provide is going to have to be an answer in percentage. So extremely important, when you give me your final answer, pay attention that you put the percentage symbol at the end of your answer. Now, the formula that we are going to make use of in order to answer this question is taking the total interest, which we calculated in the first question, and dividing that with the total amount paid. And that is the amount that we've just calculated in the previous question. And because we want our answer as a percentage, we are going to multiply this fraction with 100. Now we are going to substitute in the information that we have to our availability, which is the total interest was 1,681 Rand, and then the total amount paid back over the 24 months was 5,018 Rand, and we multiply that by 100. Now, very easy. You can just put this into your calculator as is, and your final answer will be 33.5%. This means that 33.5% of the total amount that she paid over 24 months, 33.5% of that amount went towards interest. Now, I do hope that you all understood the examples that we covered in today's webinar. I would like to leave you with a question. Do you think it is wise to borrow money if it can be avoided? Now, by this question, I mean that I do understand when you're purchasing a house or a car, that some items are extremely expensive and you will be required to take out a loan for those purchases. But when it comes to holidays, when it comes to furniture, when it comes to simple household appliances, do you think it is wise to borrow money for expenses such as that? Or do you think it is better to save up and avoid spending that additional costs on interest? Just as something to think about and to ponder about with the end of this session. Now, I would like to remind you again to please leave your questions with regard to today's topic of discussion, to leave those questions in the question box so that we can get back to you on them. And then also, before the session ends today, download the notes for week 1 as well as the slides for today's discussion. The slides and the notes on week 1 will not be available as soon as the session ends, so please make sure that you submit your questions and you make the necessary downloads before you leave the session. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye-bye.